Hello, today is June 20th. I'm a gardener for more than 20 years in Colorado, and I started this particular garden as a rose garden because at that time I became interested in roses. Before that, I was mainly doing the perennials garden. So when I started, I got this community garden space. And I'm glad that I had this particular garden because over the years, I moved around, and every time I moved, uh, my garden was gone. And I spent a lot of energy and monies and so forth to grow roses. But when you move, you cannot move roses. So community garden stays there as long as you pay dues yearly. So that's one of the nice thing about community garden. And I had this particular garden mainly for uh, old garden roses, shrub roses, and Canadian roses. Over the years, I learned that's the best I can use as a specimen here because relatively they become bigger statue and magnificent uh, looks to it. However, all these tea roses also, I buy them when you get it from Home Depot or Walmart or King Supers. Uh, you can get it about $10. So once in a while, I get those, and some of them are very successful here, but not the others. Most of the tea roses, they succumb even though they are grafted, and even though I follow the directions that you put the grafted part in 2 to 3 inches below the soil level. And but I think that mainly if I protect during the winter, the mulch and uh, thick mulch and so forth with fallen leaves, they do better. But if I don't do that, they definitely suffered and died. So that's the gardening in Colorado, rose gardening in Colorado. You really have to uh, choose the hardy varieties like Canadian roses, old garden roses, shrub roses. Some of the shrub roses are not that hardy, like knockout, for example. Even though they plant all over the place, it seems like a hardy, but to me, it's not that hardy. Knockout is kind of a medium hardy, but not much. Um, so my passion, I think, was started with David Austin roses. So 20 years ago, I got to know the David Austin roses, and I fell in love with those characteristic of David Austin roses as like a many petal, very fragrant, and the old garden roses looks to it, but it's a repetitive blooming. So that's very attractive to me at that time. So I kind of looked all over the garden center here, and toward the end of the season at that time already, but I could find some of the kind of a neglected potted David Austin roses, and those are the one that the grafted one, and it's still as of today it grows very nice, but because of its grafted, sometimes there's root stock, which is coming out uh, uh, very badly. So no, this is Dr. Huey, and I have to find Dr. Huey's growth every year and to get control of this Dr. Huey's growth. And so that's a difficult thing. But David Austin roses is has our own roots. I didn't have much success because the growth is kind of slow, and statue is kind of a small statues. So if you are interested in growing David Austin in Colorado, I definitely recommend that you buy the grafted one and try to put those grafted pots 2 to 3 inches below the soil level. And the winter time you're gonna protect with mulch and so forth. And I think that's pretty good practice for David Austin roses. But Canadian roses, for example, are very, bred as a very very cold climate. So they do very well here with own roots. So most of the Canadian roses here, for me, is from the cutting. And so they grow vigorously and very, very nice. And so I, tremendously recommend Canadian roses for Colorado residents who is interested in roses. Uh, but some hybrid tea also, if you put those grafted pots deep in the soil, it's very successful. Mostly, you know, I have some of the hybrid tea roses, and the successful one is probably cane itself is also hardy too, little bit, but most of them are very tender, and you know, try very hard to grow that, but I think they survive like 2 years or something, and then I neglect, and then they kind of die. So from my own experience, of course, definitely you can try hybrid tea roses, and but I kind of strongly recommend um, shrub roses and all roots, especially Canadian roses. I recommend that. Or this. Uh, so old garden roses, I'm very much interested in intellectually because it's a long, long history and lots of stories associated with it. But then again, old garden roses is some of them are very hardy, and I think just because of that they survived. But some of them are not that hardy and kind of a tender. So you have to study a little bit and which variety is hardy. And the old garden roses, I try to grow from cutting also own roots. And also sometimes the root system is not as vigorous. So you really have to, uh, trial and error. And probably you're gonna start doing a cutting propagation, and you learn which one is not that good and which one is better. David Austin roses, I tried to grow from the cutting, but I think it is not that good because the root growth is not that vigorous. Therefore, I would prefer the grafted one for David Austin roses. So the other thing is that um, as you do the rose garden, you feel like wow, you need lots of care to, you know, to grow roses. Of course, if you care more, and I think it's better, especially the watering and protection during the winter. That's very, very important. But other than that, even fertilizer, I don't know how important that is. Of course, important. Fertilizer is a very, very important thing. But I don't do that. I don't put the fertilizers in there. But I could, I do the periodically lots of mulches And I think that seems to be helping uh, about protecting the roses and also nutritional values of the decayed the mulches. Especially I use the fallen leaves in the fall. I gathered all the oak trees and maple trees and all these things and gather and put as a winter mulch. And that's after a while it become a very, very nice compost and therefore it's good for them. And so that's what I recommend. And I think hybrid tea, for example, some of them are doing very well, like Mr. Lincoln here. They do very well and also Tiffany hybrid tea roses very well. And some of them, like Henry Fonders and so forth, um, I thought I was like not that easy to grow, but Henry Fonder surviving very well here, and some of the hybrid tea roses doing well. But mostly shrub roses, but shrub roses also, some of them are kind of a disappears after a couple of years without much care. So I think you need, uh, some kind of a protections and so forth. It's very important. This is Austrian copper. Austrian copper do very well because this is own roots and reverting to the yellow. However, it's very, very nice. I recommend and to get that if you're interested in uh, old garden roses and so forth. And so, yeah, I think over the years, I think my passion for roses remains still strong, and I still enjoy this June time. Every June, it's like a spectacular flowering power, and some of them are roses are repetitive blooming, so they bloom until like Octoberish. But most of them, I think June is a peak, and after that, like sporadically blooms, like a Canadian roses would not rebloom that much. But David Austin, oh, this is the Benjamin Britten. This is my most favorite roses because of fragrance, very fruity fragrance, and I love that smell. And so, some of the people love the fragrance of the roses. I think that's one of the reasons that people fall in love with roses. So yeah, I think roses are worthwhile. Before 20 years ago, before then, I was a mainly perennial gardener, and I wasn't interested in roses because I thought roses are very gaudy, and I don't like that. But now I changed my mind. Roses is great, and once you get the taste of it, yeah, it is worth it. Okay, thank you. Bye.